Bashir, turning to you, whenever I've heard about the financial crisis, I'm not an expert, but the key phrase that always comes up is subprime lending and mortgages. Could you just shed a bit of light onto that?
I think in order to understand subprime, let's just understand what happened.
Okay.
I would really, if I have to, put a single reason why that happened, the most important reason is the excessive risk taking by the banks. The banks were very involved in risk-taking, and that happened because the lack of risk management or poor quality of risk management in different financial institutions. And I think we also have to step back and understand what really happened in the last 10, 12, 15 years in the global market. And as Sultan is pointing out, the globalization was the name of the game. Globalization was happening, alliances were happening between different countries. Investments were happening from US to Europe and vice versa, and then European countries investing in the emerging market. I think that process, a lot of liquidity was generated. And because of that liquidity, the banks were looking for investments to sort of enhance the returns.
Okay.
And borrowing, obviously credit and borrowing was there, it was available, but there was a category of investors who couldn't really afford it.
Okay.
But as the banks came up with this scheme or package where if there could be increased pricing on those loans, those could be marketed. So in fact, they end up giving loans to parties or obligors or sort of borrowers who couldn't really afford to make the payment, but the packages were so attractive that it made all the
But shouldn't they have sort of planned ahead and looked forward and actually realised that if we borrow money to these people, they're not going to be able to pay them back?
I think that was a problem because the short-term nature of some of the banks, because they were looking at the particular transaction, they were not looking at the entire life cycle of that product. And people were rewarded on the basis of 12 months, but those 12 months were fine, but after 12 months, what actually happened, to those assets? So the entire life cycle of a transaction or a product was not really followed. And I think there was a failing on part of the regulators also, because the regulations were not holistic, they were fragmented, and they were not really catering for the global financial system, which was complicated, and the regulator was not able to understand it.
Okay, but it's easy to blame the regulators, but isn't it the banker's job to actually know what they're doing, who they're lending money out to, and the risks involved with that?
I think it's important, but the way the entire culture was sort of going at that time, people were rewarded on the basis of their short-term successes.
Okay.
And as long as the banks were making money, everything was hunky-dory, and everybody was very happy. And this all happened when the crux came and this financial meltdown came because of the I think probably shortage of short-term liquidity in the market, and then obviously,
Reveal something I wanted to ask you. I mean, within capitalism, I've heard that actually within capitalism, you always have a cycle of you get recessions and then you get high points as well. Will it always continue like that? What do you think?
Well, I think it would, but the problem is not that, because capitalism also went through certain stages. Now we got, I believe, to the stage of, this is my own title for it, the stage of gambling. It is not proper investment, it is absolute gambling. Sultan absolutely rightly said that consumer lending or consumer credits are very, very small part of what banks and financial services do these days. Basically, the amounts of liquid money which goes here and there. You remember 10 years in '98 there was the first time in big financial crisis.
Out of Russia.
Not out of Russia. It was out of the tiger economies there.
Okay.
Russia suffered there very much for that. But this was the beginning of it. Because it was the gambling, and the gambling was. I remember one fact that. At one point here at the London Stock Exchange, the Emperor's Palace in Tokyo was valued for $1 trillion. And this was the gamble they were willing to take. This is not economy. This is, you don't call it capitalist or whatever, it is sheer gambling. And the financial crisis was due to gambling, because they were gambling not with people's money, but with destinies of the whole countries and the whole generation destinies. It is not, to a small little consumer who got, his money for a car. No, it's much, much worse. And in this respect, of course, this of course has a colossal moral and spiritual side to it.
जिंदाबाद जिंदाबाद अहमदियत जिंदाबाद अहमदियत जिंदाबाद अहमदियत जिंदाबाद अहमदियत जिंदाबाद
अहमदियत जिंदाबाद
वक्त था वक्त मसीहा न किसी और का वक्त था वक्त मसीहा न किसी और का वक्त मैं ना आता तो कोई और ही आया होता मैं ना आता तो कोई और ही आया होता
Risk is an important issue that you've just touched upon. Frigg, you work in financial institutions. How do you think risks played out in the actual financial crisis? Should we have seen the warning signs beforehand?
I think everybody did see the warning signs, but just following on from Raviel Saab's point, it's very difficult for one individual institution just to step back and say, I'm not offering this 100% mortgage or the subprime mortgage when everybody else is offering it, because they'll obviously lose business. So I think that's where the regulator needs to come in and kind of implement some rules which apply to everybody, because it's going to be very difficult in a competitive environment for any one bank to just step back and allow everybody else to do business, which everybody knows is risky.
What do you think is the government's role in all of this?
Well, I think they need to set some kind of clear guidelines in terms of lending activity, in terms of what the leverage ratios should be for various products, and offer that protection to the consumer, because the consumer itself, as we've discussed before, is obviously going to borrow as much as he can. The banking institution is going to lend as much as they can because they want to profit. So that's where the regulator and the governments have to come in to put those boundaries in.
Okay. Let's get one more view.
The only point I was wishing to make was that I do agree with a lot of the comments that are being made, but one thing that hasn't really come out enough, I think, is the moral aspect. So there should be a moral standard that each of the people involved have as well, which is that the banks, the government is really there as sort of an overarching sort of person to make sure things are happening, and they need to have a standard of morals as well, but the banks need to have the morals to understand that they should or shouldn't be doing certain things, and there's obviously the consumers as well at the same time do need to as well look at that and have an understanding of what they can afford, etc. But also then I think when it comes in, when you take into account the amount of monies being involved here, when banks are investing huge amounts of money, then that level of morality needs to become higher, and you need to consider wider implications of the investments that are being made as well, because with such huge amounts of money, it's not implications just on the bank or consumers around that bank, it's also, for a country, for global sort of impact as well. So there's more things that need to be taken into account.
That's a really good point. I want to throw that to Sultan Saab. He's talking about huge sums of money. Now, we're talking about some of the largest corporations. They're the ones that have been affected the most by all of this. So
the numbers do not fit on calculators anymore, in reality. But I think you have to take a step back and look at it in the sense of that, whoever you look at for the failings, the governments, the regulators, the bankers, the consumers, everyone has a piece of moral responsibility, because whether there's a salesman at an institution or whether there's someone who's looking to borrow money, they have to look at their own ideals of what is right and what is wrong. Whether they, lie to achieve success, or whether they are lying to themselves that I can afford to pay these things back. So it's both sides of the coin. But in terms of morality, it's very much the responsibility of all of those parties involved to ensure that their risk-reward ratio was, in terms of the banker trying to achieve success, you have to look at, a different type of sphere of things where, for example, Bashir and myself do work in financial institutions, which are very global institutions, but we have a different set of ideals to a number of other people that work within those institutions. We look at our family security, we look at the communities that we're a part of, we look at the charitable work that we may do for certain organizations. So there's a set of ideals, but there's some bankers, who literally, it's not a matter of, they live to work, and so their ideals of generating sufficient bonuses, they'll go to anything to achieve that success. So there's a balance that has to be approached.